Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tibby time. And I am here with truly a magnificent artist, a legend amongst men. Even the gods bow to this man. Now, please introduce yourself.
Okay. I am End, or ChocEnd if you prefer, or I actually go by a bunch of different names, but that's kind of the main one, I suppose. All
So,
over the place these days.
my first question for you is, what is the story behind the name ChocEnd?
It sounds kind of weird when you put it together like that, doesn't it? Um, it's because of a long time ago, well, several years ago anyway. I created a dragon character named End. I wanted to give him a name. The fact that the name End doesn't actually have any meaning. I wanted to give him a name that is unique for a dragon, but also very easy to say and easy to remember. And it's only one syllable. It's 3 letters long. So I stuck with that name for a while. But it was several years after that where End actually ended up becoming my Sona, as if like the face of my art. And a lot of people kept saying that since his scales were brown, he looked like he was made of chocolate. So I got the I guess the tagline chocolate dragon, and so that is why I've combined it into chalk end. I feel like it fits relatively well. At least it rolls off the tongue better than the old username did.
Now, speaking of your old username, now,
Yeah.
if you are truly the guy that no one remembers, how is it possible that I remember you?
Well, it's because it's kind of weird. It's kind of one funny. So when I first discovered DeviantArt way back in like 2011, I thought it was fantastic because I never seen anything like it. I didn't even know like a website like that existed. So I immediately made an art profile around like 2011 or so, and I thought I was hot stuff, honestly. Like my stick figures were like the coolest things you've ever seen in your life, and like I was I was so excited about it. But I started to realize after a while that like despite all the stuff I was posting, which was just OC stuff, although all my OCs kind of looked the same at the time. I noticed that nobody really saw any of it. I didn't get like any feedback. Nobody really faved it. Nobody commented. None of that. And I was looking at all these other artists that are getting like a ton of stuff. So I ended up deciding to start over. I just closed the account and I made a new one a couple months later. And I called it the guy no one remembers because no one remembered me from the previous art account. Although it didn't take long for that name to stop having any meaning. So like I tried to work with it, but it ended up just becoming like just my title and kind of lost its original meaning.
So, speaking of your like old OCs and stuff like that, I noticed some of them disappeared, but I noticed Shammy has kind of stayed around. Why did Shammy go from pink to light brown to dark brown to light brown?
Um, the main reason I kept changing Shammy's colors is because I really try to make sure that all my characters are very unique from one another. Not necessarily unique compared to other artists, I suppose. But for a while, Shimmy was pink because I didn't have any pink characters per se. But I ended up changing it because I thought that the pink color scheme she had was a little bit too monotonous. And I also realized that I didn't have very many orange characters at the time. So I ended up changing her to this lightish, orangish, brownish, light brown, as you said, because once again, I wanted to make sure that all my characters had a unique color scheme. And I ended up sticking with the orange was originally experimental, and although I've made slight adjustments to it over time, it's really stuck more than I expected it to. My original plan was to make her pink again, but I kind of like the way it is now.
So, I noticed in by looking at some of your older art and then looking at some of the more modern stuff, I noticed some of your older characters starting to like appear in some forms or another. Are they ever gonna appear truly how they used to be, or are they just kind of like lost to the wind, as they say?
It kind of depends on which character you're talking about. I try to keep them all updated in one form or another. I have a really, it's very difficult for me to draw my characters. I struggle to find the motivation to do so sometimes. Because usually by the time I want to draw them again, I want to just redesign them just like that. I am actually working on a project currently that has all my characters in it. Although I don't post about it very much online, excuse me, on those art accounts because I'm nervous that I might get people's hopes up. But do not worry. Pretty much every character that I used to draw on my profile, unless it's like a fan character, they're not like gone. They're gonna stay around for a good while longer. It just may be a while before they see the light of the day, but they're not gonna be completely disappeared.
Well, truly, of a lot of your characters, Janice, the Gardevoir, is like a very popular choice. Was her name Maria back in the day? Why'd you change it if so?
Actually, that's an interesting observation. I never realized so similar they look. Actually, no. Maria is actually a different artist from what I could tell. We've spoken before, although not very frequently. They are not on Discord very often, and talking via DA is not exactly the most uh is not the best way of communicating with people, unfortunately. But Maria is a Gardevoir character that belongs to somebody else entirely. And although I've drawn them before, it's not my character. It is complete coincidence that Janice looks so similar.
So, I noticed that you like to write. Do you fancy yourself a writer?
Yes. Um, I understand that writing is very challenging, and I think one of the hardest things about writing for me is that usually when I draw, I'm able to multitask. I'm usually able to listen to something, or I'm able to even watch something sometimes. Sometimes it distracts me too much, but I can't do that when I write. When I write, I have to have pretty much silence, and that's kind of rare for me these days. So I don't get the chance to write very often. Although, if I'm in the right environment, I can absolutely write, and that's when I truly enjoy doing it.
So, out of all the websites that you have frequented, Twitter, For Affinity, or DeviantArt, do you have a favorite? Or if so, which one would you recommend?
I absolutely have a favorite. DeviantArt's my favorite. I swear I'm not biased. Although I've definitely found DeviantArt to be well the largest group. I like a lot. There's a lot of things. They've all got their ups and downs, honestly. Um, Obviously, the recent changes to DeviantArt have made it less appealing to some people, but I found like the new HUD to be kind of easy to get used to. Actually, it only took me just a few days. Pretty much all the features I liked are still there. Um, I really like how you can organize your galleries. I know I don't think very many people pay attention to that kind of stuff, but that's just got the kind of detail I really like. And on the other hand, I don't really, even though I like Fur Affinity a lot, I do not like how the galleries are handled in that sense. For example, I feel like of all the those three websites, the one that tends to get the most attention for older arts is DeviantArt because I feel like it's a lot harder to find older art on Fur Affinity, and it's extremely hard to find on Twitter because it'll just be buried behind all your other posts. I feel like DeviantArt is the best for that kind of gallery. That's probably why it's my favorite.
So, a very truly important question. So, my friend, what gave you the sickness for the thickness?
You know, I've actually thought about it a long time. I've always it's different reasons. I mean, a lot of people I talk to about it, it's like some cartoon show they saw when they were younger, right? Like I could think of a few cartoons that would probably inspire me a little bit, but I don't. There's no like primary example. I'm afraid. Like all I can remember back is that when I there was just this one day I was just kind of sitting and just going through the motions and I thought, what if I actually try drawing this thing I like? And so I tried it, turned out people actually really liked it. I used to think that I was like the only person in the world that was like interested in this stuff. But the moment I started drawing it, I realized actually not only do a lot of other people like it, but they like it a little bit more than I do. But I became a little bit less afraid of drawing that kind of stuff, and so that's why I started posting it a lot more.
So,
Although,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I noticed you have, well, obviously a lot of characters. Do you have like a specific one that you enjoy drawing the most?
Not really. Going back to what I said about like redesigning characters a lot, I try to make it so that they're all really fun to draw. And the one I like to draw the most fluctuates a lot. Like usually it's Indra. So I guess yeah, if I had to give like a stable answer, I think it'd probably have to be Shamir or Indra because they are usually the easiest for me to draw. But once again, it tends to fluctuate. Like when I'm drawing like a comic or something, whatever characters in the comic is pretty much the one I'm currently interested in drawing.
So, I noticed you draw. Well, obviously you drew like for your stories and stuff like that, and you seem to do sequences and comics a lot. Do you enjoy doing like longer artworks, or are you more of a fan of shorter pieces?
It's my dream to do a long artwork. I've always wanted to make like a massive comic and just like have that kind of success. And although I've tried multiple times, I've never had a comic that's gone more than, say, I guess 13 pages or 15. No, 13. 13 is what is as far as I've gotten. So even though it's my goal to do a long comic, most of the stuff I do is a lot shorter because I find it's a lot easier to handle. It doesn't burn me out as quickly. Comics are a lot more manageable when they're shorter because you're able to plan them a lot more effectively. Like you're able to fit all the outline on like maybe 1 or 2 pages instead of like in the movies where like there's massive bulletin board, there's just thumbtacks all over it, there's papers, there's pins, there's all sorts of stuff. I don't have to do that with a like a 5 page comic or something.
So, I noticed like looking back that End was mostly just a dragon, but I noticed that they kind of changed and evolved over time, as you said. So, how did you come up with like Endra's current design, how she appears now?
You mean the one that's like as of like a couple months ago?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so well, the reason is for the longest time, and it was like my primary Sona, but I've kind of started to consider Indra as a secondary Sona. Not to say that like I'm not questioning, um, but in the sense that Indra also has part of my personality in her, for example, just like N does. If anything, they're two separate characters that have different parts of my personality injected into them. But as a result of that, I wanted Indra's body shape and her attitude to be a little bit more, li- a little bit more reflective of me. I mean, obviously, I don't look like Indra does, but at least a little bit more with the attitude that she has and like some of her backstory, for example. Like a little bit more about the whole the running thing, for example.
So, I noticed like a few times on your Twitter page you mentioned streaming. Do you stream recently, or like are you ever going to do it again if you haven't?
I'll admit it has been a while since I've streamed. I do like doing it often, but I'm too nervous about setting up a definitive schedule because sadly my current schedule fluctuates too much. I mean, obviously during the semesters I do not stream as much because I don't tend to have time for it. But sometimes like time coming up, I'm hoping that I'll get a lot more chances. If I have the time and like if I have like a big window of time open, I will absolutely stream. I've done it before. It's just been a while.
So, do you have like a favorite artist that inspires you?
Um, yes. I usually sort of like my favorite everything. I tend to change my favorite artist a lot because frankly, there's a lot that I like. But I guess if it went down to ones that really truly inspire me, um, shoot. One of my favorite artists, even though they don't really draw the kind of stuff I draw, is this artist called Latiar, or at least I know they go by different names. I could probably they draw a lot of anthros, I should say. Now I'm not interested in every single thing they draw, but on the other hand, most artists I really like, I don't like every single thing they draw. I really like their anatomy. I really like their style. I even like their really old work. I've watched them for years, and they're one artist that I've been able to watch develop, and it's been so fantastic to just watch their art develop in such a way. To see my art like develop alongside it. They've been a huge inspiration for me. I've tried to like draw anthros more as a result of their work, although I haven't had as much success as they have. but there's certainly an inspiration in one form or the other.
So, of all of your favorite artists, if you could collaborate with one of them, who would you collaborate with, and what would you guys make?
That's a good question because I realized that even though I have like a lot of favorite artists, I'm also aware that some of their styles are very, very different from mine. Unfortunately, I feel like they might be too different for me to properly collaborate with. But despite that, there are a handful of artists I feel like would really work very well with me. Lord Stormcaller, for example, comes to mind. In fact, we've tossed around the idea of collaborating before, although we have it's been difficult for us both to be available to collaborate at the same time. He's usually busy when I'm not. Now I'm usually busy and he's not, et cetera, et cetera. Although, if by some chance the two of us ever did get the chance to collaborate, I could definitely see us making a comic much like the ones I've made before, or much like the ones that he's made before. Since we both had experience with short comics, I could definitely see us doing something like that.
So, are you ever going to open up a Patreon at any time? Or have you tinkered with the idea?
Oh, yes. Well, you see, I actually do have a Patreon. I don't talk about it very much because I get a little nervous about like self-advertising. But usually that's where I put like all my sequences before I start uploading them to like the other places. I That's like the main thing. I usually it's mostly just early releases and stuff. And like I when I first started like advertising it, some of my watchers kind of got angry with me. Well, not okay, angry is not the right word. They got a little frustrated because they didn't really want to see that like all the promotional stuff. So I've kind of kept it to a minimum. But frankly, maybe I've kept it to too much, like too little of a minimum. Maybe I should talk about it at least a little bit more frequently.
Of all of your art, do you have like an ultimate goal in the future that you would like for your art to be like? Like, do you have an ultimate goal of where you want to be?
Yes. Um, Ever since I made like way back when I first made that very first art account on DeviantArt, like the whole goal was that like I really look up to comic artists like the shoot, I can't think of the name. Bone. I can't remember the name of the person who made it, but there was this like just an example of a graphic novel series that I remember reading a lot when I was in like middle school and high school and stuff. And I thought it was just fascinating how someone or like a very small team of people could create like this graphic novel or this massive comic series. And it's got this amazing cast of characters. And then if you look online, like there's hundreds upon hundreds of people that know those characters from those graphic novels. And they're like, there's fan art and there's all this support for those characters and how amazing they are. That is my goal. I've always wanted to be able to make something akin to those graphic novels I used to read, some comic that I some comic that others see and look up to, and like I want my characters to be known and loved in the same way that those characters in those graphic novels are known. That's my ultimate goal.
Well, back in the day, I noticed that you said you weren't very good at TF2. Have those times changed?
You mean Team Fortress 2, right?
Yes, sir.
I am No, I'm still rather awful at it. I it's just that I'm not much of a PC gamer. I play some games on PC, but for the most part I'm more of a console person because it's very difficult for me to like play a game on the PC and then just exit the game and then draw on the same computer. It's like it's hard for me to stay in the same spot for that long. Although I still really enjoy it, I'm just not super great at it. That's all.
So, I have been on a moral crusade to figure out this question that has been posed to humanity that not a lot of people can answer, but I am still trying to document all of the different responses that I can get. My friend, do you know what the deal with airline food is?
I'm sorry, I have no idea what the deal with airline food is. I mean, all I know is that I've seen it in like hundreds of movies, and not once have I ever seen it in real life, and that frankly drives me crazy. I don't know what's up with that.
Well, the darkness truly respires. But, my friend, thank you so much for being on this interview show. You are truly an inspiration to a lot more people than you think.
Well, I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
Well, my friends, if you have a sickness for the thickness, if you like chocolate, and you like ending things, and also if you have a very strange affliction towards anything sequence or readable, well, I have just the place for you. It's ChocEnd on Twitter, and of course, that guy nobody remembers on for Affinity, and ChocEnd on DeviantArt. Thank you very much for listening, everyone, and see you in the next one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tibby time, and I am here with truly a magnificent artist, a legend amongst men. Even the gods bow to this man. Now, please introduce yourself.
Okay. I am End, or ChocEnd if you prefer, or I actually go by a bunch of different names, but that's kind of the main one, I suppose. All
So,
over the place these days.
my first question for you is, what is the story behind the name ChocEnd?
It sounds kind of weird when you put it together like that, doesn't it? Um, it's because of a long time ago, well, several years ago anyway. I created a dragon character named End. I wanted to give him a name. The fact that the name End doesn't actually have any meaning. I wanted to give him a name that is unique for a dragon, but also very easy to say and easy to remember. And it's only one syllable. It's 3 letters long. So I stuck with that name for a while. But it was several years after that where End actually ended up becoming my Sona, as if like the face of my art. And a lot of people kept saying that since his scales were brown, he looked like he was made of chocolate. So I got the I guess the tagline Chocolate Dragon, and so that is why I've combined it into ChocEnd. I feel like it fits relatively well. At least it rolls off the tongue better than the old username did.
Now, speaking of your old username, now,
Yeah.
if you are truly the guy that no one remembers, how is it possible that I remember you?
Well, it's because it's kind of weird. It's kind of one funny. So when I first discovered DeviantArt way back in like 2011, I thought it was fantastic because I never seen anything like it. I didn't even know like a website like that existed. So I immediately made an art profile around like 2011 or so, and I thought I was hot stuff, honestly. Like my stick figures were like the coolest things you've ever seen in your life, and like I was I was so excited about it. But I started to realize after a while that like despite all the stuff I was posting, which was just OC stuff, although all my OCs kind of looked the same at the time. I noticed that nobody really saw any of it. I didn't get like any feedback. Nobody really faved it. Nobody commented. None of that. And I was looking at all these other artists who are getting like a ton of stuff. So I ended up deciding to start over. I just closed the account and I made a new one a couple months later. And I called it The Guy No One Remembers because no one remembered me from the previous art account. Although